Good afternoon. Good morning to some of you. Good late afternoon to some of you joining us overseas. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council. If I look tired and worn, I am. The symposium is coming up September 8th through the 10th in Chicago. And this is what I call the playoff beard. So excuse my lack of professionalism here. I'm just knee deep in execution. But I am here in spirit, and I'm so pleased to be joined by Antonia Hock. She is the president and founder of the AHA Group. I have long been a follower of hers. I'm part of the Antonia Hock fan club, and I borrow a lot of her innovative commentary that she has on all things customer experience and hospitality. A very warm welcome to you, Antonia.
Thanks, John. You know what? I feel like we've been connected for so many years. And I followed the Service Council and the growth. And I mean, congratulations on selling out the upcoming event so early. It's just a tribute to the programming that you all provide. It's incredible.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So for today's listening audience, we hope that you become our participating audience. We see you on LinkedIn Live. Hi, folks. Today's podcast will be recorded. You can access it after the fact and share it with colleagues. We hope you do that. We also hope that you engage with us today. Antonia has agreed to think on her toes here and take those Ask Me Anything questions. The AMA concept here is wide open here. So let's make it a fun conversation. And you know, Antonia, I know and have become part of the fan club. Let's help others become part of the fan club. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, first of all, I appreciate that, right? I'm incredibly passionate about the experience space. I founded my firm 3 years ago after spending 6 years at the Ritz-Carlton. And before that, a decade at Microsoft. I came up through the consulting world, a lot of tech in my background. I'll date myself here by saying my first job was a .com. I hope I'm actually in an audience where people know and remember what that is. But my passion runs really deep for all things entrepreneurial and experiential. I founded the firm originally because I was really dedicated to innovation and really wanting to drive the space forward with a lot of new, fresh thought leadership and ideas that companies can really put into practice to separate themselves from the herd. So that's a little bit about me.
Love it. Love it. You're also an adventurer. We're going to learn more about that as we exit today's podcast. But let's get into the topic du jour here. Let's talk about the state of hospitality. So fast and furious, let's go jump right in. So it seems like, okay, I have my own personal experiences in hospitality, and it seems like hospitality has shifted a little bit in its focus and emphasis, a little bit too much around speed and pace and revenue and profit. Than sentiment and customer value. And do you have that same observation? Are you concerned about the hospitality space and where it's trending?
I think a lot of this has come from the COVID period, right? Where they were strapped, hotels were closed for months on end. And coming out of that period, the focus on operations, speed, revenue, all the things you just highlighted, that was the way they were surviving. Now we're seeing a little bit of a shift back towards experience. I think my real challenge with hospitality, whether it's a courtyard or it's, the Amangani, I see it's just sort of homogenous. People really want to try to distinguish themselves, but every time I flip on, a podcast or I read an interview, everybody's talking about the same things. It's an incredibly homogenous industry right now.
That's a really good observation. And you mentioned that COVID was an accelerant of some of the speed, pace, revenue, profit orientation. What are some of the other current pressures that are being faced in this world, right? So COVID is behind us. Let's put that behind us. What else are you hearing in terms of the current pressures that are facing the hospitality industry?
It's a dogfight for the consumer dollar. Right? It doesn't matter what level you are in hospitality. The people that are traveling right now, are staying right now, are thinking about booking a holiday, they are looking for something unique, different. And even beyond that, they're also looking for the basics to be flawless. And this is an industry where the basics have really fallen away from flawless. I'm a road warrior. I travel the majority of the year. And I can never turn off the lens on service, experience, and hospitality. And the number of times I am disappointed on the basics before we even talk about being able to win the consumer, the basics just aren't there anymore. And that has nothing to do with price point. No matter where you are, it's the rare property that can deliver with consistency right now.
So the table stakes that are oftentimes commoditized because everybody does them, people are forgetting about the basics. That's a point you're making.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like I always say to people, you've got to be good before you can be fancy. So, no wow moment, no specialty thing is going to make me forget that you misspelled my name on my, registration form. You've got to nail the basics, and they literally today, they have to be flawless.
That there's a parallel here because we talk about service, right, and best practices and transformational journeys, and many of our community members are on this journey towards predictive, proactive service and even outcome-based orientation, and they jump over the basics to go to all these fancy the fancy new shiny new toy, right? And so I love the point you're making here. And you brought something up in your commentary that was interesting. I'd like to double click on it if I could. And that is what makes service, customer experience, and hospitality discrete and unique from one another? Because I think you have a different viewpoint on those three things.
I love it. I love this question. This is one of my favorite questions of all time because everybody uses service, hospitality, and experience like they're all interchangeable. Somehow those are all the same thing, and whatever conversation you happen to be in, you'll just pull one out, right, and just use that term. They are very unique, distinctive, and different. And the way I like to think about it is that service is tactical execution at a specific point in a customer process or journey. So and that's why I say it has to be flawless. If you're executing a tactical element, I'm expecting that to be flawless. And from my perspective, hospitality is an elevated form of service. It's like service with topspin. And experience is something altogether different. That is where we're going to put together a package of services. We're going to bring in sensory elements. We're going to design it to elicit an emotion, which is also designed to confer some sort of benefit to the company. So everybody has this sense, I feel sometimes, that experiences are these magnanimous efforts where people just feel good about each other and they make the customer feel good. We're not, the majority of companies, they're not for profits, right? We're here for profit. And why would we invest in building experiences if they don't drive hard ROI? So I think it's very important to understand the difference between service and experience. The last thing I'll say because I know you've got some really cool, interesting things to talk about here. The last thing I'll say on this topic for everybody that's listening, there was a very interesting watermark study done. And I love it. And I love to reference it because it was a 13-year study of the S&P index. And they looked specifically at the index through the lens of customer experience. And what they learned, I love it because it was a 13-year study, so not like a flash in the pan. And they learned that CX leaders were delivering 108 points higher than the index, which is a huge difference. And laggards were lagging the index by 110 points. That's a massive swing. And what I love to point out to people about that is they didn't study customer service, because customer service doesn't get you the benefit. Customer service is table stakes. Experience is where the ROI sits. So that's really where I like to focus the conversation.
Oh, I love that viewpoint, and I think it's really, really prominent, and some of our data suggests the same things. I want to go to the next part of the conversation, which is around this evolution of customer value measurement. So we've been tracking how customer measurement has evolved, right? And it's gone from this satisfaction orientation to net promoter, would you recommend us, to customer effort, right? How difficult or how easy was it to seek and receive service today? Do you find the same evolution is happening in retail and hospitality?
I think industries are at different places on this curve, right? Some people
Yeah.
are still clinging to survey measurement,
Yeah.
and some people are really starting to push the envelope.
Mm.
My perspective is one of hard measurement. I'm a fan of that, right? Coming from my business background, particularly in technology, where you measure
Mm.
everything, and
Yep.
investment is against hard metrics most of the time. We're looking more at things like cost to serve versus value generated, churn metrics, retention metrics, time to value. We even have some clients now that are looking at revenue per experience delivered, which
Mm.
I think is a fascinating kind of measurement. And we don't have the time today to go in the architecture behind that kind of a measurement. But share of wallet. At the end of the day, for me, if you can't tie service and experience to business measurement that matters, you're not doing it right.
Outstanding. We have some comments from our listening now participating audience. Juan Cruz, an advisory board member of the Service Council, says that it's the simple things that make the biggest thing for me. Definitely my name being spelled and pronounced correctly is at the top of my list. He also had this comment around your talk track here. So, sort of opining on this whole concept of service plus experience is where you arrive at hospitality. Would you agree with that sentiment?
From my perspective, hospitality is just an elevated form of service. I think about hospitality and I think about things that are sort of in the classic realm of that. Really great
Mm.
manners, the way you serve a beverage if you're in a hotel. Like I would put those in the element of hospitality. Classic, like, when your mom's hosting Thanksgiving and she goes to the door and greets everybody with a warm, hello. That's hospitality. When I think about experience, that's, service, hospitality, plus, right? So I put that equation in the other direction.
And the examples you gave, there's a human element. There's an importance of the human centered approach to hospitality, and I love that because with autonomous journeys and automation journeys and digital transformation,
Yeah.
this we need to start thinking about technology and people, not or, right? And so there's become this adversarial relationship that I think we need to try and park, if you will. So I love the commentary around human-centered approach. Let's go to something that I think is really interesting, and this is, journey mapping is not new. It's been around forever and a day, but I feel like it's making a comeback. We see workstream mapping making a huge comeback, especially because of this digital automation and technology. Processes being re-engineered, thinking about how can we automate and autonomize certain elements of the journey and then infuse human touch at the right moments. Are you still a believer in journey mapping? And can you share any interesting stories of work you've done around journey mapping where you've come to some aha moments?
Oh, I love that. I would say two things about journey mapping. One, I think there's tremendous value in it as long as you're focused on what kind of journey mapping you're doing, right? I
Yeah.
like to talk about sort of the operational journey map, right? Where we're really going to go deep and we're going to look at all these various customer touch points and we're going to think about the touch point from kind of an operational frictionless, what do we do and why do we do it at that point? Because we really want to optimize the operational efficiency of something. And then there's the journey map that focuses in on those critical, that emotional customer journey. And in my view, there's always, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're in
Mhm.
technology, retail, healthcare, every customer journey, your Walmart, there's an emotional element to a customer journey if you unpack it far enough. And the really great journey maps on that side of the house are looking to build critical experiences that capitalize on the emotion at the right point. And because we know, the science of memory, the science of emotion, that is really where you capture the customer. If you can connect the memories and the emotion, even if it's a very small engagement with the customer, you're going to win them longer term. So two
I
different
love it.
kinds of journey maps, right? And I find most people think of journey mapping through that operational lens. It's really important to think about both.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's great. And we had a comment from our Vice President of Research and Advisory, Gerardo Pelayo. Thank you, Gerardo. Maybe customer service should always incorporate the experience. When it doesn't, it's transactional. When it does, it's a human connection. We must remain vigilant to tell the difference.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on this commentary?
I think this is a great point. I think sometimes it is very hard to create a really meaningful human connection inside of customer service, because sometimes what customers want from a true transactional customer service moment is efficiency. And there, that has a place, right? Even at any point, even in ultra high-end luxury, there are moments where that service needs to be spot on, highly efficient, and highly optimized. And it might not be about human connection. So I would say it's really about understanding the differences. And that gets down to understanding your customers.
Love it. I want to circle back to your point around operational and emotional journeys, right? Because we look at benchmarking similarly from the point of view of we have a concept called service index, where we look at there's three constituents that have an experience. There's the business experience, which is that operational achievement, financial and operational. There's the employee experience and the customer experience. And how do these three things Venn diagram together in this magic moment, right? So I appreciate the commentary there. Can we get into not macro, but micro moments? Because you talk about the basics, right? So I think customer value happens in both, right? Customer value. But we've seen some of the most publicly displayed customer moments from major brands like Disney with the Dancing Princess, and the Ritz-Carlton with Joshie the Giraffe. I've told that story literally every year at the symposium for the last decade. And then companies like Lego, right, with Luca the Ninjago fan, and so many special moments of human touch, right? Can you provide some examples of micro moments where you've seen some real special things, some of the things off the beaten path, not those common stories that we've all know and love, but some things that you've come across in your journey?
So, what I think is really interesting, a trend that we're watching very closely right now and participating in is what I would say all of those stories have in common is this kind of broad element of wow, right? And you look at all of them; they require quite a bit of planning, quite a bit of effort, quite a bit of intentionality behind them, and they extend over a period of time. And a lot of our customers are saying at scale, that is incredibly hard to execute. It still has a place. And we want to be on the lookout for those, and we want to deliver those. In some industries, there's a lot of currency behind that. But there's also a lot of industries that have micro moments that they can scale. And those little interactions are what we're hearing more and more and more are becoming that critical investment area. So when I think about a micro moment, it can be something, and I love the comment earlier about like, you've got to nail my name. It is incredible how many organizations just don't emphasize basic enthusiastic greetings. Whether that's your chat bot, that's your AI agent, that's your email, or that's in person, that alone today, I hate to sound like, it sounds like a bit of a pessimistic comment, but that alone is a wow moment. In that micro 100%. Moment, a beautiful greeting that's really thoughtful, really well done, really authentic, really on brand. I have people all the time, we have policies at our firm around email, and we regularly get comments back from people that say, wow, that's the nicest written email I've gotten in weeks. It's a wow moment. And people don't think about them that way anymore. They think about the big, unicorns, the sky will open and the rainbows will fall out. And those have a place, but it's also those little things done with rigor.
Absolutely. 100%. And all too often we focus on issue resolution, and people are not problems to be solved. People are humans that want to be heard, right? They want to be recognized. They want to be connected. So I love the viewpoints here. Let's get back into the whole technology evolution. Actually, before we do, we had an interesting comment here, or perhaps a question. from Graham King. Thank you, Graham, for your participation. And I think his question is really relevant because it does talk about that big challenge that everybody's faced with, which is talent crisis, right? And staffing and fluctuations. And Graham asks, how does staffing fluctuations and requirements impact service quality, and how is that challenge met?
This question could go a lot of different ways. So Graham, if you want a different kind of answer than I'm about to give, you can sort of craft it and ask in a different way. But one thing I will say for sure around talent fluctuations, onboarding is absolutely critical. When you think about churn and talent churn and bringing on board new individuals into a business, your onboarding is one of the most important investments you can make. And that onboarding cannot be about filling out paperwork, like your W-2 and selecting your health benefits. It has to immediately rock a new employee back in their seat on the expectations around their performance with customers and an emotional connection to the brand. Because if you don't nail that in the first 24 hours of their employment, you're going to be off to a not great start, right? And then it will impact your service quality. You've got to nail their onboarding and that initial training.
100%. I love it. And it shouldn't just be check boxes. It should be celebratory.
Yes.
Right. Why do we have signing days for sports athletes, but not for service and customer experience professionals? Right.
Absolutely.
Let's make it celebratory. And then the indoctrination into your philosophy. One of the things that really bothers me, and I'm going to be building this message at our symposium upcoming, is, people often encompasses culture, talent acquisition, employee engagement, succession planning, retirement. It's like all these things. And culture is just like thrown into it. And it's like, no, philosophy needs to precede people. Philosophy needs to be a carve out so that you have an operating mantra that indoctrinates your culture and it permeates the company. And so I think that's something that I'd love to see a little bit more of. We had a follow-up from Graham, and he says, what about ad hoc staff requirements for sickness and et cetera? Yeah, please.
So do you mean, when you're bringing in somebody that's maybe going to cover for someone that's sick? John, do you think that's the direction of the question?
I think that is, and I think he's thinking about supplemental help that's plugging in behind, the full-time employee. And there's another parallel here to this question, I think, is, the service broader community that we support. We're hearing a lot of supplemental talent strategies where they're thinking about, 1099 contractor extended networks that aren't indoctrinated into the culture as much as that full-time experience. So maybe there's some parallels between this question.
Got it. You know what I would say about that, because we have a lot of clients that are thinking about this in this way, and hopefully this will drill into that. You have to have an onboarding program for these people. If they're going to represent you, I think about as an example, really good example of this, the NFL, right? Stadium staff. Your fan experience is hugely impacted by the stadium staff on game day if you're attending an NFL game. Yet the majority of that staff is not your team, it's contract labor. It's oftentimes people that are working 3 jobs. Your onboarding is just as important for 1099s, contractors, partners, trade partners, people that represent your brand. Now, it doesn't have to be as elaborate as your full-time employees, but they have to be able to represent you correctly. So it's worth the investment because it's your brand at stake and your reputation.
Love it. Great commentary. Let's move down to data and intelligence and technology, back to this whole digital automation thing. And data's like the currency, the oil of many organizations and enterprises, and moving data from unstructured to structured and becoming intelligence driven so that you can personalize the experience, right? So know their name, know their preferences, and align accordingly is becoming more and more paramount, right, to the experience. But How do you see intelligence improving the hospitality industry? Is it underutilized today? Is it being utilized in a manner that's effective? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I would say specific to the hospitality industry, I think it's generally underutilized.
Yeah.
And I think that's not, not to point a finger at just that industry. I would say in general, it is, people collect a lot of data about customers. It's the translation to the usage where things fall down.
Yep.
You might have a data warehouse that's just like loaded, but if you don't have an actual activation plan for it that, doesn't just include direct mail or push campaigns or baseline personalization usage, you really have to be able to think about how the data translates into the experience. And most people stop at the usage of like what I would call baseline personalization. Great, I'll pull
Love
your
it.
name into my email blast. My chat bot will call you by the name that's in your CRM file. That isn't high value usage of the data. It's the opportunity to show me that you saw and learned something about me that I didn't, that I'm surprised by. Like you
Yeah.
remember that I climb mountains in my free time. Like that's going to blow me away when you're interacting with me on a customer service issue.
Yeah.
Um, using my name, great use of your data warehouse, but not going to drive high value.
Absolutely. And I think there's two things that I love about your commentary. One, the data warehousing. Two, the data translation, right? So that you translate it to the emotional experience you're trying to achieve. But going to the other first moment of data warehousing, we continue to hear just too many disparate sources of data, and really increasing the effort of the employee,
Mhm.
which the employee, the customer experience is the overflow of employee experience. So if your employees are struggling to access critical data
Mhm.
and they have to go to all these disparate sources to be effective in their job, then you've got a big challenge here, and it's going to trickle into the customer experience. let's
Yes.
let's land on our last question, which is cross pollination of best practices. So how do you lift some of these things you're learning from hospitality and start to apply these to other industries? And can you provide two or three examples, or
Sure.
one, whatever you have time for,
You know,
that would model against?
what I would say, in sort of like a lightning round, there's some things about
Sure.
hospitality I think make them very interesting. It's one of the few industries I can think about that I would almost call like is an experience pure play, because
Mm,
they, every hotel is the same. It's a bed, it's a bathroom. It might be really
yep.
beautiful at the high end, but if they don't nail the experience, they're not going to differentiate themselves from anyone else in their class. And so I think that is such an interesting reason to watch what they do, because without experience, they really have nothing to sell except a
Yeah.
baseline commodity. And so when I look at best practices like employee experience, nailing that 5-star, even if you're the Courtyard now, nailing those 5-star principles, and then thinking about what are those critical experiences. I don't see any other industry focused at that level. Most people think of
Sure.
experience as an add-on to what they do. Hospitality, it is what they do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I love the application. There's no alternative in hospitality, right? So they have to think about the emotional connection above and beyond those basic human elements that we all know and love. Hospitality should deliver, right? So I love it. Let's. This has been a great conversation. We're gonna have to do this again sometime. But for our listening audience, Antonia, can you share something you peppered and sprinkled in some personal elements in your life? And I've been, part of the fan club and have seen some of your incredible accomplishments. But tell us a little bit about yourself personally. What are some of the things you like to do outside of work and all this cool stuff, hospitality?
So I would just say I'm dedicated to experience 24/7, 365, right? I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about its ability to transform. And so when I think about my personal endeavors, it's the same thing. I am a rock climber. I am a high altitude mountaineer. I love those experiences. I recently just came back from climbing in the Andes, where I did a 22,000 foot peak. Had some really interesting, was out there at the various camps, base camp, camp 1, camp 2, camp 3. Had some fascinating experiences that really, were transformative. It's what we look to experiences for. So I grew up all over the world. I'm just immersed in experience in all ways.
I love it. This has been a really awesome conversation. Excuse me, for our audience. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and expertise in this field. And we're going to definitely have to do this again at some point, because I think we just touched and scratched the surface on this topic. So we'll look forward to that opportunity. She is Antonia Hock. Antonia, thank you for joining today's In Service podcast episode. This has been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. It was a pleasure.